Hello, I hope you're doing very well. Regular viewers probably think of this as an Akai Force channel, which would be accurate probably because I've published about 50 or 60 Force videos over the last 6 months or so. But quite recently I've published a few Maschine Plus videos, and that has generated fairly inevitable questions about how the two devices compare. It's quite a big subject, and if people want a deep dive on that, then let me know in the comments and I'll actually make that video. But in a nutshell, because that's not quite what we're talking about today, in a nutshell, basically they are fairly similar. They're two different approaches to the same concept. So they're sort of expanded or smart or superpower groove boxes in my mind. They both have samplers in them. They both have plug-in synth instruments, VSTs basically. They have loads of effects. They also have the kind of arranger or song mode that you wouldn't find on a normal groove box. They're different, but the functionality is there. So for a normal everyday user, someone that just wants to make music, the differences or the nuances between these are quite subtle. They both have strengths and weaknesses, and the right one to pick would probably be based on sort of doing a thing where you, like a cost benefit thing or whatever, where you look at the pros and cons and see which one fits you best. However, having said all of that, there is one massive fundamental difference between these two devices, and it's a real gulf in capability. Not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just something you need to be aware of, because if you are wanting to do a certain kind of performance in particular, then one of these can't do it and the other one can. And it could be a deal breaker. So I thought it'd be useful for people to know. So the best way to describe that whole situation to you is to actually demonstrate it. So I'm going to jump down onto the two devices now and show you exactly what I mean. So on the Force, I've got three tracks that you need to worry about. The fourth track is just audio from the Maschine Plus, so there's nothing happening there. But I've basically got drums, bass, and keys. So drums is just two different drum patterns. A bass pattern, it's the same. It's just what I want to do is basically have two scenes to move in between. I've got a macro set up on the bass, which allows me to open the filter cutoff. And then I've got no clips in the keys or synthesizer track because I want to play it live for a specific reason. So basically what I want to do is launch my first scene so it plays. So we'll get a drum pattern and a bass pattern, and I'm going to play live over the top of it, just some notes on the synthesizer. Do that, let it go round, and then I'm going to trigger the second scene. So what I want to happen then is as the second scene is coming on, I'm going to keep playing, so I want to keep playing my notes. I'm going to open up the filter cutoff so that we get a bit of a transition, so we move from scene to scene. You'll know exactly what I mean. So let's try that now. This will be sloppy, but you know. So we've got a little thing here, bass and drums. So here's my little synth. So I'm going to let it go around one more time. So now I'm going to trigger the second scene. Piece of cake. So you can see that all worked perfectly. I was able to do all of that at the same time, no problem. Now if we move across to the Maschine Plus, can you all still see me? Yeah, good. Sorry, I'm not used to this two camera setup. I've got exactly the same thing going on here on the Maschine Plus. So I've got three tracks. I've got drums, bass and keys. There's my keys. I've got the same thing. I've got two scenes set up. So if we go to ideas mode, you can see I've got two scenes. There's no clips in our third track because that's the one I'm playing live. So what I want to do is replicate exactly what I just did. Okay, oh, by the way, I've got a macro set up as well. If we go to macros, you can see cutoff, that's my macro here. So what I want to do is exactly the same thing. I want to launch the first scene, play the keys, do the filter cutoff, and then trigger the second scene. So right away, we can see there's a bit of an issue here. I want my keyboard to be on keyboard mode so I can play it, but now I can't see my macros and I can't see my scenes. So no problem, I press scenes. So now I've got access to my scenes and I've got access to my keyboard, but I've lost access to the macro. So if I press the macro, I've now got access to the macro and the keyboard, but I've lost access to the scenes. So there is a way around that. You've got a button here called scene. When you press it, it allows you to trigger a scene. So just watch what happens when I do that. Let me just make sure I'm on the right scene. Right. Ooh, wrong one. Idea, scene 1, yeah. Okay, so we're going to trigger it. Here's our first scene. I'm playing Ray. I've got my filter cut off there. If I now want to trigger the second scene, I have to press the scene button to get my scenes, and you can see I've immediately lost access to my keyboard. So the thing is, or what that means in a nutshell, is you can't do two things at once on the Maschine Plus. I'll give you another example. If I play our scene here on Force, I can play the keyboard, I can mute tracks in and out, no problem, all at the same time. Whereas if we go to our scene on here, playing my keys, if I want to mute something, you can see I lose access to the keyboard. I can mute stuff in and out, but I can't play the keys at the same time, and you can see that I can't touch the macro at the same time either. So this is the massive fundamental difference between these two devices. The Akai Force, Akai have basically built the control surface on the Force to completely divorce each of its different elements from the others so that you can set them up to do all different things at the same time. As an example, we can go to our mixer page. So I can have the mixer on the screen. I can have the macro knobs across here as they are. If I press launch and note together, I can launch clips and scenes, and I can play the keys, and I can do muting at the bottom, all at the same time. None of that is possible on Maschine Plus, because whatever button you press, whatever mode you select, it puts the entire device into that focus. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing on the Maschine Plus, because it's actually how quite a lot of devices work. The push 2, it has a similar sort of limitation in that you can do devices, or you can have the mixer up, but you can't have both. You can get around it on Ableton by plugging different controls and mapping things. So I'm not saying this is bad. What I am saying is that the Force is remarkably unique. It is the only device I know that can do this kind of thing in one box without plugging any other controllers in. You can set it up to basically operate the control surface completely independent of each other. So when I said there's a fundamental difference that could be a deal breaker, if you're someone who just wants to sit down, whether it's at home or in the park or whatever, and just make music on a device, arrange it into tracks, then bounce out those tracks and export them, these two devices are probably quite close. You know, as I said, it would be a case of nuance as to which one you want to buy. However, if you want to make dynamic performances, if you want to be able to trigger scenes, do performance mixing, and improvise, that kind of thing, Force isn't just the best out of these two. It's the only device, I think, that lets you do it in the way that the Force does it. So that is the big difference between these two devices. It's not a brand thing. It's a control surface thing. That's really the big difference. So if you're thinking about buying one of these and you want to perform, buy the Force. If you're thinking about buying one of these and you just want to make beats or make loops or just make tracks, you've got a bit more thinking to do. But anyway, I hope that's helped. And if anyone is going through the process of deciding what to buy, hopefully that will have helped steer them or stop them making a bad decision anyway. And that's about it. I hope that was useful. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.